Before we begin, a friendly reminder for our premium subscribers. 那所有的订阅者的会员们呢，我们6月会推出一个 live and a free lesson for our subscribers. 那记得去收一下你的信件 ，filled out the survey， 还有告诉我们你希望在这个课程当中能够看到什么、听到什么。We cannot wait to see you in our live lessons.Premium 订阅的会员在我们6月的课程中可以学到即席简报的架构。那在今天的单元呢 ，Nick 跟我要来跟你分享 Impromptu Q&A 要注意什么。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast.我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. June is here, which means another month of premium has arrived. And for those subscribers enjoying, this month in Premium, we're talking a lot about impromptu presentation. Those moments where, with just a minute or an hour's notice, someone drags you into a room and asks you to do a presentation. Now, for this podcast episode, we want to talk about something impromptu that everyone has to do, even outside of presentation. Whether you prepared or not, it's the Q&A session. That moment where people throw questions at you and you need to be able to answer both their question and their concerns on the spot.
没错，我相信大家最害怕的事情就是即席的这种简报或者是 Q&A, right? 因为你根本没有什么时间来准备，你也很害怕自己表现得不够好，害怕自己讲错话，或者是完全没有办法回答人家在问的问题该怎么办。那其实在我们 Premium 课程当中，我们就一直有在讲一个很重要的心态，就是 structure 架构，它真的可以来拯救你。The structure will set you free. 因为 structure 它可以让你听起来，第一个你的思维是很清楚的，第二个你也可以听起来是非常专业的。那所以在这个单元呢，虽然我们是在讲 Q&A session，还是要让大家知道 the structure is more important than you think.
As Sherry covered, structure is what helps you get through these answers without having to worry about if someone can follow you. When you have a really solid structure, you can always lean back and rely on this to help you get through these impromptu situations. And it's not just about formulas, it's actually about that mindset and thought process to come across very logical, even though you may be thinking and speaking at the same time. For this episode, we're going to offer a key structure for you to follow. But we're actually going to split this into 2 episodes. We're going to talk about the beginning and ending of your structure in depth today, and then that middle critical context part we're going to bring to you in the next episode, because it's going to involve a lot of reframing, rephrasing, and explaining based on a frame.
所以今天我们要介绍一个所谓的 formula， 那这个 formula 呢，我们会把它分成2个单元来仔细的讲。那当然我们希望大家能够很轻松的吸收这些 information， 所以今天呢，就让我们来开始这个 formula。 那我们的 formula 就是 AREA, A-R-E-A.
And AREA stands for acknowledge, reframe, explain, and ask. The first step, acknowledge, is acknowledge the emotion of someone's question. R, reframe, is to reframe or paraphrase the question to be in your own context. Step 3, E, explain. Explain the answer based on the frame that you set. And then 4, ask. Ask advice and put the asker in the position of providing guidance rather than criticism.
那我们先从第一个步骤，也就是 acknowledge the emotion but not label it。 那 acknowledge 我们在中文也可以简单的来说，就是认识去接受他这个 emotion。 Let's say 今天台下有一个人呢，他敌意蛮深的，他就来问，就跟你说 Your pricing strategy sucks。 有可能他们真的有人会问这样子的问题，这可能不是问题，他只是觉得他就是想要来 challenge 你。那这个时候呢，我们要不要把他的这种很 negative 的 emotion 把它再重新的 repeat 出来，还是呢你是不是很巧妙的把它这个负面的这种情绪把它稀释掉？所以我们就用了这种 acknowledge the emotion， 我们就可以说 I hear a lot of passion from you, or I hear great concerns from you.
For those listeners who have been with us from the beginning, you've heard us talk a lot about Chris Voss. And Chris Voss has a specific technique called labeling the emotion, where you very accurately state the emotion that you feel coming from the other person. Now, this area and formula is inspired by another expert, Matt Abraham. Now, Matt Abraham is actually very specific to say this is not about labeling the emotion, it's by acknowledging the emotion. Now, where acknowledging the emotion is important because people want to feel heard when they make a statement or when they ask a question. If you do not acknowledge the emotion and you just answer the question, they may feel like you just have a formula you're going through. But when you acknowledge the emotion, you actually help them feel that they are heard. But the difference between labeling and acknowledging is in label, you directly state like, oh, you sound upset, you sound angry. Whereas acknowledging is about reframing that emotion into something that is less direct to how they feel, but still makes them feel heard. Like, I hear a lot of passion from you, or you seem to care about this thing.
那我这边先稍微解释一下 Matt Abraham 跟 Chris Voss 他们在讲这个主题，就如何去面对这些比较负面的情绪的部分啊，我觉得他们是有点站在不同的情况。那可能在 Chris Voss 因为他比较 specialized 是 negotiation, a lot of it's more like closed room, 他在一个 conference room private session, 那可能是1对1的这种状况，所以他会用这种 labeling emotion 就直接 point out you sound upset, you sound angry, 用这样的方式能够去带他这个 negotiation。 那 Matt Abraham 因为他是比较专业的一个 trainer， 那如果你常在台上单独的一个人要面对台下很多人的问题的话，你大概也能了解这种心情，就是你必须能够要让现场的这种气氛是非常的 peaceful, or as peaceful as it can be。 所以这样子的状况之下呢，他为什么就会讲了，请你去 acknowledge 去认同这个 emotion， 但是你不要直接的去把它提出来，因为呢你不想要能够在接下来有可能还要跟台下的人去辩论这个 emotion。 So let's say 如果对方讲说 Your pricing strategy sucks， 然后你就说You sounded angry， 那对方可能就是说 Well, I'm not angry, I'm just frustrated, you know， 你们就开始会在这个 emotion 上面可能有一些 debate。 那其实在这种 Q&A session， 这个是你不想要带进去的一个 situation。
So again, to clarify, acknowledging the emotion is about making the other person feel heard, but not diving into understanding the nuance or the subtlety of the emotion. It's just, I hear you, but here's how I'm going to answer the question. Part of what you will hear in acknowledging the emotion is also reframing the emotion, which helps us get into our second and third steps, which is when I hear the emotion and I reframe the context a bit, I also get into rephrasing the question. And I may change the question or the statement of your pricing strategy sucks to, you seem to care a lot about how our pricing strategy works.
没错，那其实第二个非常的重要，这个 reframing 也就是我们可以把它想成我们重新的去组合 他刚刚所问的这些问题，有点像乐高啦，你把它重新的来组合，你可能把一些你不想要拿出来的这些那一块乐高，你把它藏起来或把它拿起来。That reframing and rephrasing of the question to something that you actually wanted to talk about and something you actually wanted to answer. I think this is a very important steps. 那当然这个步骤呢，因为它比较需要长时间来解释，所以我们在下一个单元会把更详细的 information 给大家。
Let us just quickly push through step 2 and step 3, which we'll cover in the next episode, so we can get to step 4. But if someone made the statement of your pricing strategy sucks, or I don't believe you have a very good price, I would acknowledge the emotion, reframe it, and explain based on my own context. So I may say, you seem to care a lot about our pricing. And if I understand you correctly, you want to better understand our pricing strategy. That would cover acknowledge and reframe. Then when I would explain the context I just said. The way we developed our pricing strategy is this. That would be explain based on the frame. Which brings us to the last thing we really want to cover today, which is asking for advice. A lot of times we take Q&A very literally to mean they ask questions, you give answers. But anytime that you have communication, you have time for a two-way conversation. So our last piece is ask advice and put that person from a critical position to a position of guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. 那第4个步骤呢，其实它也是个很好的一个技巧。如果对方他今天问了一个比较有点充满敌意的这些问题的话，你也可以把它当成一个，所以他今天是一个 asker, right? He's the person that asked the question. 你也可以请他提供他专业的一些经验或者一些 advice, right?Ask him, just say, hey, what advice would you give anyone in this kind of situation? 这种方式其实也蛮巧妙的，可以把现场的气氛从比较僵硬变成是比较 peaceful 的。Again, Matt Abraham 他非常注重的就是一个气氛。Right? 当你在做简报，你站在台上控场的人是你，所以你要怎么样能够让这个现场的气氛、现场的这种感觉是很好的。那这个我觉得也是个非常好的技巧。
Now, of course, this is a context of I'm in a boardroom or I'm within an internal or meeting with a client. Probably should not ask this if you're in an auditorium of like 2,000 people. But there's 2 mindsets behind why you switch this around. One is that I am trying to change the feeling of this person from my critic to someone that I can work with. Right? This is a brainstorming session together, or this is something that we are building together. So I'm trying to reframe their context in the conversation. But the second level of why we do this question is if the person is an expert in their field or has a lot of experience, this is a great time for you to learn from them.
Yeah.
However, if they're just being critical, but you ask them that question and it's very clear from their expertise, from their answer, that they also are not an expert or they don't have any contribution, then you can very just quickly ignore them. So when we put this in position for providing guidance, it could be what Sherry said before. What advice would you give for someone in this situation? Or you can also frame it as like, in your experience, what times have you seen this work or this not work, right? So when you phrase that, it's like, in your experience, do you have an example? Now I'm actually focusing it on, now they can be a critic, but do they have any kind of experience or expertise that they can actually share, or are they just complaining?
所以我觉得这个部分呢，如果对方他只是想要来 complain 想要来闹场的话，你问他具体的 example 他可能答不出来。 But 如果他是真的有很多经验他可以提供的话， and in the space I think it's fantastic to kind of get everyone to start sharing their experience. And again, you achieved a very nice atmosphere for your presentation and Q&A session.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed this overview of the area framework for impromptu Q&A. To get more information about these second steps, refrain and explain, join us in the next episode. And we'll get more into how do you reframe someone's critique or how do you reframe someone's question into something that you can actually answer. Join us next time for the Reframe and Explain. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.